Hey, expert investors, we're back, and I'm sounding the alarm. Interest rates are going to rise next year. What are you going to do about it? Okay, that's the rhetoric we're hearing in the news, in the newspapers, in these articles. As you can see, Canada's inflation rate soars to 20-year high, raising odds of an early rate hike. Well, my point of view, if inflation was really that high, they should be raising the interest rate right now. Why are they waiting? It doesn't make any sense. The reality is, from our perspective, is that they really can't raise interest rates very easily because sovereign Canada is in so much debt. If they were a consumer, they would be bankrupt 5 times over. So that's the equivalent of you making $100,000 a year, but having $350,000 in consumer debt. Never mind mortgage debt. I'm talking consumer debt, credit cards, all that nonsense. So you make $100,000 a year, but you're in debt $350,000 a year, and it's the equivalent of calling Visa and saying, "Hey Visa, why don't you raise my interest rate this month? I think I can afford it." Okay, that's the equivalent of raising rates, or prime rate for Canada at the moment. They're in a lose-lose situation, and not to mention putting a lot of people at risk right now by raising rates and causing people to be able to default on some debt and obligations that they're barely being able to maintain right now. Okay, so could they raise rates? Will they raise rates? I'm going to bet, and I'm putting it on video, I'm going to bet the answer is yes. But my bet is they do it very slowly, and it's more for effect than it is for any kind of result. I've seen it happen in the past where they've raised rates a quarter point, only for them to bring it back down a quarter point. Okay, a quarter point raise in the winter or spring isn't going to make much of a difference to anyone. It isn't going to affect the market. It isn't going to affect the numbers and supply-demand factors and affordability all that much at all. But it does send a signal to the market and to the buyers, that they want a calming effect. So if they really wanted a calming effect, I think the mind games they play is to raise a quarter point, maybe take a break, then raise another quarter point to really hammer home the point, and then keep it static for a while, then maybe pull it back when they need it. Okay, sustained higher rates are an almost impossibility with the cycle of debt that we have going on in the marketplace right now. They're saying here inflation rate is higher than it's been in the last 20 years. What they don't tell you is in February 2003, the basket of goods that they used to measure inflation, the consumer price index, was very different. Okay, very different. As time passes and as inflation ticks higher and higher, they typically change the type of goods they measure in the consumer price index basket. Where I'll give you an example where in 2003 they might say, okay, steak, the price of steak is this, it has gone up by 4.7%. Well, because steak has just continually increased in price and is very expensive now in comparison, instead of measuring steak, they'll measure ground beef, right? So it skews the data. And, it's funny, where does it say it? Somewhere in here. The biggest driver of CPI's latest surge was a 42% increase in gasoline prices, which are stoked by a severe mismatch between supply and demand in global energy markets. No, it's not. They just taxed the hell out of it, and the price went up. Okay, yes, the price fluctuates. We all know the price of gas and other commodities, oil, does fluctuate with the market. But they failed to mention that several taxes were added to the price, which made the overall cost go up. Can you imagine if single-family homes in the GTA were considered in this price index? Okay, the rate of inflation would be 20% a year. Okay, it doesn't make sense. So careful who you're listening to and how you let these headlines affect you. It really makes a big difference. You have to be able to read between the lines here. So are they going to raise rates? My bet is yes, sometime early next year. Is it going to have a major effect on affordability? I don't think so. How do you position yourself to be a winner in that trend? Well, if rates come up, my feeling is that it gives the market a bit of a jolt, a scare, and flatlines everything for a little while. And as a buyer, as someone looking to make an acquisition, that's a good time to be buying. And I think it scares some inventory back onto the market also, because people will want to take advantage of what they perceive to be the last peak, the high. Oh, I'm thinking about selling and now prices might come down a bit. I better sell right now. So I think we scare some inventory back on, scare some buyers away, and the supply-demand scene here in the Greater Toronto and Southern Ontario area balances out a little bit. It's still probably a seller's market, but it creates some balance. So it's good if you're a buyer, okay? But do expect them to go up. Just plan for it. Don't be scared. Just plan for it and know in your mind that significant interest rate hikes are nearly impossible to do and sustain for any length of period of time. Okay? I hope that makes sense.